Okay, so we're going to go for part 2 now of this series. So I think I've called it the Curtain Call series. So this is part 2. So we're going to continue. I'm going to do a very, very quick recap actually of the previous stream. Well, the previous one was quite a long one because I did go through a lot of the dream, a lot of the bits and pieces to do with dream meaning in the book I've got, which again I'm going to cite. I did cite in the previous one. Always look in the description. You'll find information around what I've cited, what scripture I've actually written, which ones I've in passing I've just mentioned and said, oh, it says this, and I'll put the scripture in there. Videos where I kind of say, oh yeah, I've seen that in another video I've filmed. I will try to find those videos and I'll put them in the description with the links as well. Now I've been doing that on the most recent ones, trying to help people obviously to find these dreams I'm talking about. Quite often I'll just say, oh, it's this dream called that. It's becoming more and more difficult to find those dreams because I'm up to about 120 dreams, I think it is now. So it's a little bit more difficult. So again, I'm trying to make it as easy as I can for people to find them. So a quick recap then. So previous dream was one where it was in a big, long garden. There was a family of people. They were staying over at the house, but then they were just going off to some sort of family sort of fun day sort of thing. And one of the families had a beach ball. There was at least one beach ball. It might have been more than one beach ball actually, red, white and blue, because it stood out. And I was in the dream thinking about buying more land. I already had a massive garden, which was nothing but grassland really. And I wanted more land in this dream. It didn't feel like in a sort of selfish way at all. Just so you know, it was more, I don't know. It was like, I don't know, was I trying to expand? I'm not sure. Was I going to use this land for something? Again, I'm not sure. But I took us obviously on a bit of a route there. I was going through all the dream meanings. I showed a little video from a TV program which confirmed, in my opinion anyway, this is a dream to think about and not been, because I had been to the dream twice and not decided to film it. But then here we are. So the timing was just not right. I mean, that's literally when these things happen. The timing isn't right. And I've seen some phenomenal stuff in season 1 especially, where all these small little bits of dreams, I just thought, I'll leave that till later. I'll leave that till later. And then they start all coming together. All these little ones are coming together and forming good chains of dreams. So I have faith that that's going to happen in this season as well. So I'm starting to look through, and a lot of the big dreams, I would say, that I've kind of starred and stuff, I've filmed a lot of those now. So I'm just going to see where we go from here. And I've mentioned before in previous videos, I don't really ever have a plan. I just kind of go into it thinking, right, well, I've done that one. Let's have a quick skim through any titles that kind of jump out to me. Okay, I'll have a quick read of a few, and then I film one. I film whatever one I feel like filming at the time. Sometimes they're led one to another purely because there might be a connection there. So that's been the case with the last few dreams. There's been a bit of a connection. Oddly, I filmed some yesterday, and then I've found like that might link into these in a way. So I'm going to do a little bit of a recap on bits from yesterday. So again, we'll have to see where the link for this one goes, because this has again got a lot of packed information into this one. Let's get going. So this dream, so this is now the 14th of the 1st, 2026. 14th of the 1st, 2026, and I believe the other one was 29th of the 5th, 2025. So this is a pretty big gap between these two dreams. So yeah, really, really vivid dream. This is set out in my childhood home, as is a lot of my dreams actually. And I'm actually in my old bedroom, very small bedroom, really, really small bedroom, but it had everything a teenage kid could ever want was in there. And everyone in their 20s actually, because I was there in my very early 20s. And what I was doing in this dream was I was staring out my window. Okay, so I'm staring out my window and I'm looking out on the dark sky. And I noticed, which is barely in view, where you have to kind of almost like lean forward and lean to the side to see it. That's what I was kind of doing, because in my view was a red, white and blue beach ball in the sky, just moving across the sky. Obviously incredibly random. This is where it linked into that previous dream. Then coming behind it was also a sign of Saturn. So it's in the planet Saturn, and it was depicted not like you would see in a telescope at all. So it's like a neon sign, very, very basic, you know, like round planet and a ring around it. And I was like, Saturn, obviously Saturn. There you go. There you go. Very basic and looking just like, oh yeah, the Saturn neon light sign that my eldest daughter used to have in her bedroom. So it was literally like that. It looked exactly the same sort of thing, really. Very, very basic looking. And it did light up in the sky like a neon sign. It was really bright but localized light, if you see what I mean. Because if you think about like a neon sign, it does put out a lot of light. Obviously, it's quite bright when you're looking at it, but that light doesn't transfer out. It, like if there was just a neon sign, it wouldn't really light up much around you, would it? So it was like that. It was very localized but very bright light. Then yeah, so we've got the beach ball has started to move across the sky, and it's just moving across like horizontally. So it's just moving across, and as I said, it's just out the corner where I'm kind of looking through the window at a corner, and I'm just seeing this come into view. So I'm just seeing the beach ball come into view, and then behind it, as it's coming into view, then there's the Saturn sign, which is right next to it, coming into view, and then another sign comes in. Okay, so there's 3 signs. The third sign that came in was a very basic looking horse. Again, it was in this kind of neon looking light. And this horse had a rider on it. So it's a, where are we? And it was kind of it was a whitish color. So again, it was like a neon sign. So if you think of if you're putting together a neon sign, you can't go too heavy with the detail, obviously, because if you're doing it with a tube light, aren't you? So you've got to be kind of basic, but you can get some of the detail in, which makes it obvious. And it was a horse that looked like it was, not that it was moving, sorry, how this looked was like a galloping horse coming towards you with a rider on the back. So it was kind of facing me. Sorry, hopefully that makes sense. It wasn't like a side view of a horse. It was more of a front and slightly angled view of a horse with a rider on it. Okay, and this light was, I put here, it wasn't like, how I would describe it is, you know, when you get in spotlights or something like that, or a light bulb, you know, you get to choose the type of light you want, don't you? You get like a cool light or a warm light or somewhere in the middle. This is more of a warm light. So it's where it's got that kind of slightly orangey tint, I would say, to it, rather than a real cold light, which is just pure white. And then you get the one in the middle. It was more towards that kind of warmer light color. So it was basically an off-white is basically what I'm saying. Okay. And yeah, I didn't write this down at the time, but just going off memory, I can remember that. Pretty sure that was the case. And I've got a feeling that the Saturn sign was sort of pink or something. And again, I'm pretty sure that was the color it was in my daughter's bedroom. So again, let's see where this goes. As I see these things in the sky, my heart in the dream, my heart starts racing. I mean, going absolutely flat out. And it was like, this is so incredibly significant what I've just seen in the sky. And my heart, as I said, was going absolutely mad. And because in the dream, I recognize I've seen a beach ball before in a dream. And I'm seeing something I've seen before. And this is significant. Not that I was aware it was a dream, if that makes sense. So I wasn't aware I was in a dream, but I was aware in the dream that I had dreamt of a beach ball before. And I was making this kind of quick connection in my mind, or in the dream. As I saw this scrolling horizontally, one after another, I ran out of my bedroom and I ran into my parents' room, which is next door. So I say ran, I mean, it's like 3 strides, you know, and you're in. So it's not exactly far, but I mean, I really quickly hurried into the bedroom, like I'm going to warn them. But it was also to get a witness. So that's what I would say it was. It was almost like trying to get a witness, because if you see something and you see something absolutely crazy, you want somebody else to see it, so that you don't sound like an idiot. You know, when somebody says, "Oh, I saw this UFO that came down and stuff," and then you want other people to see it, so you've got witnesses, and it gives more. Well, it also confirms the fact that you know, you've not just hallucinated this or something. So I've ran into the bedroom to get somebody to witness this with me. Okay, so rather than going and telling everybody what was going on, I didn't run in there and start saying this is happening, that's happening, this happening, etc. I just ran in, and I was trying to coax my mum out. So I was kind of like going, come here, come here, come here, come here, you know, like something was happening. But I wanted to separate her from the other people that were in the room. Okay, and this is because I was very aware in the dream that I'm a believer, that she's a believer, but the other people in the room aren't necessarily. And so I'm kind of thinking, well, she's the person I need to see, really, to see this, because she'll get it. You know, she'll get what this is all about. And I needed her in the other room to see this. So I was aware, yeah, the other others in the room were not believers, and so I needed my mum. There you go. As I was aware that this was a sign that Jesus was returning. It was so clear to me. In the dream, it was so clear. It was Jesus is coming. This is the sign we've been waiting for. You know, this is the sign. It's going to happen really soon. By the time that she got to the room, the beach ball, the Saturn sign, and the horse had pretty much where's it gone? Pretty much been covered now. Pretty much covered the sky and almost not visible now. So it was to the point where they were either moving behind trees or something, to the point where, you know, she's going to miss it. She's not going to see this, you know, unless and she comes in. So, and the horse, yeah, pretty much covered by the sky and almost not visible anymore, as there was only a small patch of the sky that was actually visible. So it was a little bit different to reality. Now, again, I think I've mentioned this in other dreams, actually. I've had this skyline in several dreams now, where I've looked out of my childhood bedroom window, and the landscape can be different. I've looked out of where I live right now, and the landscape's slightly different. Like when I described the one called the Orb that I filmed, I looked out of my room and I saw loads of out of my bedroom, as in where I live right now, and there was loads of like really tall buildings. There isn't that at all where I live. There's a couple of like 10-story, 15-story flats, a couple of blocks, just 2 or 3 that we can see from our bedroom. But this was all over in this other dream. And I had another one as well where the sky was kind of like completely clear, and it wouldn't be clear in reality. There'd be loads of trees looking at my childhood window. So this is more to reality, you see. So in this particular dream, there was quite a lot of trees, and there was in reality loads of big oak trees, you know, like tens of feet high, you know, that you couldn't really see through much, only a little bit. And so it cut off a lot of my field of view actually in that room. And that's what happened in this dream, where I was only seeing a pretty small proportion really of the sky was actually visible. So these signs moved across the sky to the point where I guess they're now behind the trees or something like that. Sorry, I'm going a little bit from memory as well as reading this. So let's have a quick look. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, that is literally it. Then, so so what I'm looking at is out the window, and I'm looking out to my far right, I mentioned, and it's coming across. Now I notice down and to my not far left, but down and to my left, there's some other stuff going on. Okay, so what I see there at ground level is, yeah, bottom left of my window. Obviously I'm only 2 stories up, so I mean, it's flat ground. I'm not kind of like towering above anything, but I'm looking down, and just only out to a short distance. It's not really that far away. I would have said, so how far away what I'm just about to describe is happening? 75 feet, I would say, I guess, something like that, you know, diagonally down from my window. Anyway, so what I'm about to describe is, I noticed at ground level, bottom left of my window, that there was another beach ball. And this beach ball was kind of rolling around like it was under its own power. It was just kind of rolling around. And I put like a hamster's wheel in that, you know, when you've got a hamster in there, it can change direction. It moves around almost like, you know, like what are they called, like jumping beans. I don't know if you ever had those. I had those as a kid. I remember I got from like a joke shop, or when we went on holiday or something, little beans that have just got like a magnet in them, I think it is, or something like that. Something that's weighted, so you can push them and then they just keep, they roll and roll and roll in a way that just doesn't look at all natural because it's weighted. So this was like that. It was very much like moving in that way. So it was kind of changing direction. It was moving forward. It was moving back. It was moving sideways, but nothing around it was actually acting upon it to make it do that. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Changing directions, moving around in a very small area, and it was of a children's playground, which doesn't exist in reality. So in reality, that area just beyond an alleyway that went behind our house was a newish estate. So when we first moved in, none of it was there. I've mentioned in previous streams that it was all just like a fruit packing place, and then it turned into a garden furniture place. And then part of that area got sold off, and then it was thrown into houses. How many times have you heard me on these videos saying that's just what we do in the UK? If a business goes bust, goes out of business, let's just stick some houses on it. Let's demolish it, stick some houses on it, job done. That is it. That is the answer to everything. Put houses on it, okay? Put flats on it, even better. Yeah, that is the UK, I'm afraid. So where was I up to? So this is, so in this dream, it was just a very smallish playground, which I guess was to service this new estate, which I don't even know. I haven't even wandered around there since it was built. As a kid, I say as a kid, I mean, I was probably a teenager by the time they started to build all that out, but I don't really recall ever really going in there, to be honest. I have actually driven by there a couple of times recently, just out of curiosity. I was like, is my memory right on this? Because I was thinking of a dream and what I'd seen in a dream, and I thought, I'm just going to go to the area and is that what it actually is like? And it was similar, very similar. But anyway, so it's in this playground, and it was in a small area, this little playground, and I felt like it was trying to communicate with the children in the playground. So again, a little bit odd because it was sort of, I'm pretty sure it was nighttime. I'm not. Oh, okay, here we go. It was very, very early evening, so it's like dusk, which I mentioned in the previous dream, literally only a couple of dreams back, where I had a dream and it was all around dusk sort of time. So just as the sun's coming down, where it's getting dark, but it's not yet dark, was kind of how it was. So it looks like it was getting dark. So I don't know what time of year it was. I mean, it could have realistically been quite early. I mean, in the winter, it starts getting dark around about 4 o'clock. So it could have been early evening, and so kids are still going to be out potentially playing. Again, not that I think the time of the year is relevant for this, and I didn't get any indication of stuff like that to pin it down in any way. But so it's just a few people in this park while it was a little dark. In that it was early evening, and so really only just getting dark rather than pitch black darkness. It wasn't yet at that point. I actually opened my bedroom window and I started shouting at this beach ball. So I started so I put here shouting and taunting it, and my mum was trying to hush me up, tell me just like don't don't kind of poke the bear sort of thing, but I wasn't afraid of it at all. I was just more anxious because I thought, I kind of thought, this is it, and this is what I've mentioned. So it's like Jesus is coming, this is it, and I just felt like this. I've got nothing to worry about now, really. I don't feel like I've got anything to worry about. I was anxious because I was thinking, well, how this is like obviously a big sign of Jesus is going to be here very, very soon, but what happens from here? And I didn't really know, so I was a little bit anxious from that point of view, but I wasn't afraid of this beach ball thing at all. And this is why, as I said on the previous stream, I talked about who the beach ball could be. I've got no reason to necessarily think 100% it was that person, but it felt like in here it was confirming potentially it was an entity. It was, I mean, because obviously it's not a person necessarily because of you seeing it as a beach ball. So it's very symbolic. Whatever it means, it's pretty symbolic. I'm not 100%. I certainly wasn't in the previous stream. I again have some other thoughts on this as we go, but also I didn't want this to be a false alarm. Okay, so I was very aware in the dream that I didn't want to kind of ring all the bells to say Jesus is coming, and he's not. So I didn't want to raise that kind of false alarm. And this is also why I went to get a witness as well, so that I would be believed and that what I'd seen. And then I woke up. I woke up from this dream. So I put, so those in the bedroom. So again, I've woken up, but this is me just sort of pondering on it. So those in the bedroom, I was a little vague on whether it was my mum and dad. I mean, they broke up when I was about 18, I think it was, but I'm not sure if it was my dad, but may have been. There was a third person in there, so that could have been my wife. I put even maybe a sister. I never had a sister. I don't know. I couldn't identify all the people. The main character was my mum in this, and trying to get my mum out of the room. I was sort of paying attention to the people in there, but they were meant to represent non-believers, as far as I'm understanding it, because of me looking to get my mum who would get it, what was going on. I'm going to quickly do Dream 2. Now, I don't know whether this is linked in any way. Probably not, but I'm going to mention it anyway, because if I've got two dreams, one after another, I often will put them together because I don't want to strip that away and then find out that had some kind of meaning. And sometimes it comes as a later revelation when I hear it back. I'm thinking, oh, of course that links in. So I'm going to quickly, this is a very, very brief one anyway. So I then had a second dream. This was actually prior to this dream as well. So this dream then led into, that I'm about to go through, led into this Signs in the Sky dream. So prior to this, I remember being out at a nightclub sort of environment, and I put here, I'd shamefully come in very late, very, very drunk, and I was being told by family members how I had actually acted while drunk when they were out with me. But I was out for hours later than they had. So it's basically like they'd gone out with me, we'd gone out for something, we're all having a little bit of a drink, but everybody had gone home, and I just stayed out and I just carried on drinking for hours on my own, I think is what was mentioned here. But I was out for hours later after they had left, and remember that there was some sort of a knife attack. So they were kind of concerned because there was stuff on the news to do with a knife attack. So they were telling me about it, but I was somewhat completely oblivious to what had actually happened. And hearing the news, I was hearing it from them. That's the first time I'd heard it. But this was basically, they were talking to me about it because it happened in the same location that we were at. And I just knew nothing about it because I was just such a drunk. I just didn't have any memory of it at all in any way. And I was told that I was going to be, because I was there at that location when it happened, I was going to be called as a witness by the police. And I was just thinking, I'm not going to be any help to them whatsoever. I don't remember anything at all. And that's what it was. Some sort of a knife attack. I was being called I was very, very drunk, and I was being called as a witness. So, transparency. So I'm going to go through transparency then. So 2 to 3 days prior to this dream, I'd actually updated my dream list. So this was around 11th for the 1st, I'd done that. So I checked it back, and this dream's the 14th for the 1st, so only 3 days later. And so I wonder whether, obviously, reading the dream back, that was the beach ball one, which I've just filmed, had actually influenced at all me having this dream in the first place. It may have done. Of course it may have done. If I've read something and I'm thinking, I'm sure this has got meaning, because I've had this conviction of it having meaning, in that I had this video thing, a little program that came on that felt very much in keeping with what that dream was about, came up, and it made me think, right, this is a keeper. There's something to this. But I couldn't figure out really all that much about what it was about. So that was, again, I imagine possibly on my mind, but it is 3 days later. So how much was it on my mind? I don't know. But I wonder whether I was, in reading that dream a few days ago, made me think about the beach ball thing. Here we go, beach ball again. I had decided to obviously drop the dream a second time because of, after getting the dream interpretation sort of aspects to the dream, I just couldn't piece it together. So you'll get that from the last stream. I was saying oh, theatre means this, oh, purchasing land means this, land means this, a garden means this, you know, or beach ball means this, and I'm like, I can't really piece all these elements together. You'll get that from the other dream. That's why it did drag on a bit. Drag on? No, it was thoroughly entertaining, and you were captivated by it. It didn't drag on at all. Sorry, couldn't piece it together. So this dream had been binned 3 times, and I just didn't know what to do with it. But then, as I said, it came up with this confirmation, so I thought, right, well, it's got to be something. There's got to be something to this. And then obviously this dream came up, and then there's the beach ball again. So nightclub stabbing bit could have been connected with my wife watching Law and Order. It's all about people killing each other all the time, isn't it? So that may have influenced it as well. If you're watching stuff that's about murders and stuff all the time, well, you're going to get it maybe invade your dream life. So that is the transparency aspect. Now, thoughts-wise, well, firstly, up close, this is what the images looked like. Okay, now, how should we do this? How shall we do this? Because I can't really read through everything that's on this page. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly show you the images and flick the pages so you can see what I saw more or less, and then I'm going to flip it back, and then I'm going to read it, because me holding it still and stuff, you're going to get irritated by it. I would anyway, watching my hand wobble about and try and read it all out. So it'll be awkward. I'll pause it for a second. I'll flip it. Okay, so there you go. So there's a horseman. This is the horseman right here. That's just a tracing, basically, of something I found online. I think I kind of put the image on and then quickly drew over turned the brightness up, took a quick outline, and then filled it all in. But it looked somewhat like that. So if you imagine that in the sky with a bit less detail, obviously there's quite a lot of detail on that. It had a bit less detail than that, because obviously if you imagine that in a neon sign, that's going to be quite difficult to make a neon sign out of. So slightly less detail, but that was the closest match. I was looking for ages for the best match, but you can see what I mean by it wasn't a side-on image, it wasn't a front-on image, it was somewhat slightly angled. It was actually a bit bigger in the face of the horse in comparison, so it's almost like it was a bit closer looking, and I saw a little bit less of the body, but I couldn't find anything, and I'm not that good a drawer that I could just do it from memory or anything like that. So that was as close as I could get it, it was very close to that. Okay, this is what I meant by a Saturn. So okay, so you've got the rings there going around, but it was as basic as that. Okay, in a neon sign. The middle part, that center circle bit was a ring, rather than it being solid color, I think. But I think when I drew it first, it looked a bit weird, so I just kind of left it like that. So it's more obvious of it looking like Saturn, like that. And then the third one, if you've never seen a beach ball before, that's what the beach ball looks like. Multiple different colors. That's the beach ball. Okay. So again, I'm going to flip it. There we go. I think that's about right. That's the way the camera was. Right. I'm going to go through my because obviously we're into the thoughts section now. So we're going to start discussing this, unwrapping all of this as to what I think it is. Okay. Let's see where we go. So the horseman. Where have we heard the horseman? So, well, I put here, I'm going to read out just my notes. So I put, I cannot be 100%, but I think it was lit up with a white light, as I've already mentioned. I can't be 100% because I didn't write it in my notes as to the colours, but I'm pretty sure it was. And so I think it represents, the first of the 4 horsemen, the one that comes bringing peace, which is the white horseman. Okay. It took me a little moment just to get that, to be honest. And I was thinking, white horse in the sky should be really obvious to me, because I've had stuff very similar to this already. So this was, I've seen the black horse. I think that's in a revelation that I put together, which is in the, what's it called? It's in the crypto billionaire. That's it. Crypto billionaire is the one that actually mentions about the black horse, and that was just a revelation that came afterwards. And it was so obvious. When you get that little bit click, then it all makes sense now. So all the hyperinflation and everything's going to cost a lot of money and all of this sort of stuff from a currency crash, well, that makes sense now. That's the Black Horseman. Yes, it was so obvious, but at the time, it wasn't at all. And it does have double meaning as well. So I'll also link in the original Black Horse one, where I said it's not a black horse. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to write notes there so I remember. Right, got to put that in there. Okay, so of the four horsemen, it's that's clearly representing the white horse, isn't it, of Revelation? And what does the white horse comes bearing false peace. Okay, and this blah 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 blah. Yeah. So I'll just quickly read it as it is. So I put here. This is the picture I showed you. So this is a tracing of an image that looked very similar. Seeing the horse coming towards me. Not that it was moving; it was stationary, but it was that how it looked like it was coming towards me, and a rider behind. But it was a rider that was a little bit lower down behind the head. The head was the main thing, and the head was a little bit lower. So it did look a bit different, obviously, to this, but closest I could get it. Yeah, and I put here, I'm pretty sure that it was on its rear legs, rearing up. I'm pretty sure it was. And it was a yellowy white color. Okay. Like a room color light. Okay. And I'm going to quickly jump to this now, because I don't want to miss this. And when I read yellowy colored white light, I immediately remembered my dream book. But only right now, just before filming. Okay, I've got this dream book again. I'll cite it. So if you're interested, you can grab it. So what does white, as in specifically an off-white, which is what this would be. This wasn't a pure white. This was a kind of like a warmish coloured white. I'm pretty sure this is the case. Okay, pretty sure. I know that I didn't say white in my notes, but I was kind of like confused as to why I didn't write white. After looking it over, I was like, that was a white horse. Why didn't I write white? Anyway, but it was an off-white horse. So this dream book says, number one, it could mean that it's not quite right. 2, it could be false righteousness. 3, not right with God. Okay, and it gives things like Isaiah 64, 6a. It's got 2 Corinthians 11, 14 to 15, and 2 Timothy 3, 4b to 5 here. It says something else here. I don't quite know what that means. I haven't looked at those actually. I don't really need them, I don't think, to know that makes sense, that it's false righteousness, because of it talks about how our what are we saying? It talks about how we are washed, white as snow, and in the blood of what's it called? Blood of Jesus. So our garments are white, pure white, which represents, holiness and righteousness and stuff like that, which is why it talks about God as having white hair as well. In certain ways, he's described visually. Okay. But that again makes sense. The white horseman. So he comes bringing peace, comes as a peacemaker, but he's not, it's false. And that's exactly what that means. False, because it's an off-white. So I thought that I would mention that. Right. That just came to me literally as I was quickly reading it before starting to film it. So back to this then. So I actually described how it was basic and white, semi-detailed. It was similar to the picture I drew there, but it was a little more childlike. I said it was almost like a pasta shape, where you get like kids pasta and it will be, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. Think of like a cartoon or something like that, and it's all the characters and they put them in as pasta shapes. It's just to encourage the kids, isn't it, to eat their pasta. It kind of looked like that. It was sort of very basic in its shape, not quite as detailed as this, but again, lower in detail, but it communicated a kind of cartoon-like looking horse and a rider. Okay. And okay, yeah. And also reminded me of the horses you get on carousels. You know, the carousel's like a some sort of a fair or fairground or something like that. It reminded me of that, a carousel, because if I put like a pole literally straight down on that picture, it would look exactly like a carousel horse. So Saturn then. So Saturn, or does Saturn mean Satan? Because they sound incredibly close. And I thought that I'd heard actually somewhere that Saturn and Satan was somehow connected in some way that I'd seen online. I went down again. I'll go into that now. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but we'll see. We'll see. So I put Saturn, or does that mean Satan? Maybe, I don't know. We've got a horse, which is Revelation. Well, we have Satan in Revelation, so could it be that? I put, yeah, in that they sound very similar, of course, and given the other symbols, makes me think that this is the message, most probably that it's Satan. While there is no biblical connection with Saturn and Satan, I have seen videos on this, and so God trying to communicate. Yeah. Okay, so this is me saying, in looking to see whether Saturn and Satan are kind of together in any way, in anything online, or is there any real connection in have they ever been put together and associated with each other, or in any way in any religious books or anything like that, or even in Satanism or anything like that? It was, when I looked it up, it was kind of like, no. But I have made that connection in my mind, haven't I? I've just said that because I've seen videos on it before. So it makes me think, well, God could have used that to communicate Satan to me, because I did immediately make that connection. Do you see what I mean? So even if it's not right, if it leads you to the right place, then that symbol can still be used. Okay? So yeah, I've seen videos on this, and so God trying to communicate on that idea in that way, by that association, even if it's not correct, still makes sense. That could well be what it means. It looked very much like this picture I've just shown you, with the ring not following around the planet. So it was depicted in the way that I showed you, which is almost like it connects into the body of it, and it doesn't go around. Because when I drew it around like that, and how a ring would look like, it didn't look anything like what I saw. So I drew it in a way that is what I saw. Okay. As I said, I'm not sure whether that center ring was pure light, or whether the planet part, let's say, was pure light, or whether it was a ring. I can't remember. I may go into that here. Yeah. So yes, I've already mentioned things here. So my daughter had a neon bedroom light exactly like this. Some years ago, it's taken off when I just stopped working. I mean, that's the problem with neon lights, isn't it? You get taken a bit of a bash and then they stop working. Reminded me of that big time. In the sky, I put in the sky, it may have been pink. I have a feeling it was, as it stood out next to the horse. So it certainly wasn't white, but it was a color that stuck out, and it was just one solid color. But I don't remember it being an earth, kind of like basic colors. I seem to remember it being really striking, but I've got a feeling it was pink. Really stood out next to the horse, which was this bright, this yellowish, warm white light. But so I looked up pink in this dream book just to give me, what does pink mean? I was just curious, actually, because colors really do mean things in dreams. So pink means, one, flesh, the flesh, let's say, as in the body and being fleshly, thinking about all that sort of, doing what you want to do, all that kind of stuff. Sensual, immoral, sex, childhood innocence, feminine, young and delicate, or calm. Okay. Now, I'm really in two minds whether to mention where I'm going to go with this next. But one of the last dreams I went through a book of around astrology that I've got, and it talks about Saturn in that book. And so I think I'm going to cover it off, because I don't know whether it has any relevance. So it's this book, astrology book, okay, by Ken Johnson. It talks about the pre-flood origins of astrology, so where it all comes from. The bits that I read out on a previous video, which was only a couple of videos ago now, which is part of a series of 3 videos. I forget already what it was called. I only filmed it yesterday. But it was called Unrestrained series. So it was basically that, with that particular series, it was one main big dream, and then it had zodiac bits. It had zodiac signs and stuff like that in it, and it sent me on a route where I had this real conviction to go through this book, certain aspects of it. I'd mentioned it when I was in a previous dream as well, but in that particular dream, I'd written down to myself, read the astrology book in full before you even think about filming this, and I did. And the bits I wanted to cover off were to do with the Magi, so the people who see signs in the sky, in the Bible telling of the wise men that came and found Jesus, and I go through all of that, and I go through that from what's it called, ancient church fathers that actually wrote down information that came directly from those wise men. So this is all in church history. So I go through all of that in the previous series. So that's in video 2. And then the third one, I talked about what I've got here, which is the creation, basically, of the gods of the ancient world. So Zeus and Kronos and lots of others like Ares and Venus and quite a few. And I go through that. I apologize for when I went through that, there was some crazy names and stuff in that, like Greek names and things. I was all over the shop, like trying to say these names. So it didn't come across that great. So I'm just going to try and read this part out. Okay. And this is about Saturn, who was known as the god Kronos. Okay. Kronos. And you'll see this in multiple different films that have got ancient Greek society and stuff in there. I said Clash of the Titans, and there was a few others. The film Troy has the Apollo temple in it. Pretty sure it does. Yeah, I'm just going to go through this. So this is about Saturn. So I'm just going to quickly read through this. So what it's basically talking about is how who they worshipped as gods were never gods in the first place. They were just humans of history. Okay, I'm not going to go through the back history. I may need to explain stuff a little bit though. So let's just say there's a dad, and his name was Uranus, which is obviously the planet. Okay, and he had one of the sons was called Saturn. Okay, so here we go. So among the sons of Uranus were Titan and Saturn / Kronos. Saturn's older brother, Titan, wanted to rule the kingdom, but his mother, Ceres, and 2 of his sisters supported his younger brother, Saturn, to be the next ruler. So as I mentioned in the previous video, I got it a bit mixed up, but Saturn is the younger brother, so the one who would automatically really receive the kingship, let's say, would be Titan, who is the older brother. Generally, that's how it works, and has done through royalty and stuff like that for a long time, hasn't it? So it was actually Saturn who was the one who was being supported to be king. So he would allow, so Titan would allow Saturn to take the throne under 2 conditions. Firstly, that he had no male heirs, and secondly, at his death, one of his own sons, so Titan's sons, would be ruler in his place. But an oracle, so someone who prophesies, does prophecies and stuff. So an oracle prophesies that Saturn would actually have a son that would overthrow his own kingdom. So Saturn actually sacrificed all of his sons, being given this prophecy, to the gods. And he also said, he is also said to have castrated his father to prevent further rivals from the throne. Saturn then married Rhea, who was one of his sisters, who actually his dad, Uranus, had secretly sent to kill Saturn. Saturn seized several of Uranus's provinces, and in the end captured and confined Uranus. Uranus died in grief, which is the dad. Under Saturn's rule, his kingdom reached from Syria and Phoenicia all the way to Spain and Mauritania, which is on the west coast of Africa. So the far west coast of Africa is where Mauritania is, in Africa. Belus, who was deified as well and worshipped by the Babylonians and the Assyrians, ruled Babylon at the same time. So basically, he was just a human, but he was deified and said to be a god, even though he was ruling the Babylonians and the Assyrians at that time. So in the same way as obviously this history of Saturn ruling in Greece. Okay, and the church fathers say this was about 322 years before the Great Trojan War. Obviously, I just mentioned about Battle of Troy, didn't I? So I only just mention that because there's just some interesting elements of where was it? So to do with seizing provinces and stuff like that. And he's a terrible, terrible ruler. I mean, his son is even worse, I believe, who's Jupiter and Zeus. Massive adulterer and sexually abusing people, men and women. I think that was him, wasn't it? Yeah, men and women, young boys and stuff like that. And I was just wondering if there was any kind of anything to do with what I'd seen there that could match up in some way. So I'll just throw that out there. But again, it was interesting that it talked about obviously lands being seized, and so he basically takes a kingdom that was really never really his. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting, godlike. It makes me think of the Antichrist. Is probably, you're hearing where I'm going, but it makes me think of the Antichrist because he's a human, but he gets deified because he's seen to do things that are godly. He takes territory, sets up. We've got the beast system and stuff like that, but people are all under this system, under the Antichrist. Yeah, it has those kind of same elements to it, which made me think, I'm going to put that in there. So that's all there was really to say on that, but I just wanted to just pop that in because of the kingdom preventing heirs. Oh yeah, yes, preventing heirs. Now this links into something I watched on a video probably about a couple of days ago, which was talking about, what is it called? It's an organization, isn't it, that's set up of world leaders to bring peace and what's it called? Trump is setting that all up, and he's going to be president of that, and he can't, it's not linked to his actual presidency from what I understand. So just because he's president, it doesn't mean that he can't continue to be president of this organization. Is it the Board of Peace or something like that it's called, with loads and loads of world leaders which are all looking to bring peace. Well, we've just seen the White Horseman, okay, who is the one who comes to bring peace. And the interesting thing that I saw in that video was, as I said, that if he's still the right man for the job, just because he's president doesn't mean that he can't carry on indefinitely as a leader of that organization, okay? And so that reminded me a little bit of the Saturn sort of scenario of him preventing heirs, so somebody who can succeed him of Saturn in what I just read, okay? Because he, again, in that Saturn thing, he kills all of his sons, so he can't have any heirs. He even castrates his dad, so his dad can't even have any more sons that could maybe challenge his throne. So it just had a lot of tones of that. I'm certainly not saying that Trump is the Antichrist. Not at all. I'm just saying that this could be setting up a system here of rule that involves multiple countries. So bringing lots of countries together in the way that we see in the 10 toes of Daniel, multiple nations that cede power to a ruler. it could be somebody that rises up from within this kind of organization, because it's set up in such a way that feels just too close to the Antichrist, to me, way too close, with this setting up peace. A leader is going to rise from potentially within this organization that's going to have massive power. Anyway, I'm going to leave that bit there. And the next bit, the beach ball. The other thing that maybe points me towards Trump, again, not as the Antichrist, again, keep hearing me say I'm not saying he's the Antichrist, is that I felt like the beach ball, the red, white, and blue, was pointing me to America, and that the beach ball in the dream book actually mentioned something like words said in jest or in being funny and stuff like that. Obviously, he does a lot of stuff on social media, like I mentioned in the previous video, that made me think that could represent a person and a nation. Well, that would be a president, wouldn't it? A person and a nation. And how he was so how this beach ball was interacting in the playground, though, not really sure. Not really sure what that represents. I'm just going to start reading through what I wrote down here about the beach ball, and we'll just see where this goes, because sometimes I do, as you know, by watching my videos, I do jump around and I'm picking up things I remember from things, but then I often cover that off anyway. But as I've also mentioned before, if the information is on my mind, I just say it, because I very much feel that a lot of these videos, the Holy Spirit is certainly guiding me through areas that I just don't have real full understanding, and it often comes through as I'm saying it. And sometimes I hear the words back and I'm like, why did I choose to use that word? And then I look into it and I think, oh wow, that just because I use that word, that does actually now bring on a new light to what I was saying there. Anyway, moving on. So the beach ball aspect. So it says it. So it ran from right, moving across to left hand side of the sky. So it's moving, because as I said, I'm looking out the window. There we go. Something that's popped into my mind. I'm going to say it. I've said this many times as well. When you're looking out of a window in a dream, very, very frequently, it means looking into the future. So it's seen as prophecy. Not saying necessarily that it will happen in exactly that way, but it's future event. Okay, that's looking through a window generally, and I've had loads of dreams looking through windows, loads of them, and they're all future events. When I've looked into them, it's like, oh, this is from Revelation, hasn't yet happened. You know, this is spoken about in the Old Testament, but it's talking about stuff that's going to happen that's not yet happened. You know, so there's a lot of that. Okay, so I'm looking through a window, meaning future. Okay, so where are we? Yeah, so all of these characters move from right across to left-hand type of the side of the sky, and they also went in a specific order, didn't they? If you would notice, we had the beach ball, then we had the Saturn symbol, then we had the horseman. So this could, again, I'm jumping ahead, aren't I? Actually denote a timeline of what happens, and then what not happens next, and then what happens next, maybe. Okay, so the way the beach ball acted, which I know sounds like an odd comment, but it was to talk to children, or was it talking to the young generation or something like that? What were the children representing? What was the playground? What did that mean? And it felt like it was, what it felt like it was doing was it was deceiving, and that's why I was shouting at this thing. You know, I mentioned that I was shouting out and taunting it and saying stuff to it. I was angry at this beach ball. How incredibly illogical is that? I'm seeing a beach ball rolling around in a playground and I'm shouting at it, because in the dream I had a knowledge of what this sort of represented to a certain extent, and I was very aware that this beach ball was moving around and it was talking to people that were in this playground, and it was children in the playground, and I knew that the beach ball represented deception. Okay, so I think that's what it's talking about. But again, we'll see where this goes. The aspect, yes, okay, yes. So it's speaking to the younger generations, and I felt it was to deceive them. So obviously it doesn't have a mouth, but it felt like it was telepathically speaking to them, trying to speak to these children. The aspect of the beach ball being in the sky, which is obviously in the heavens, let's say, and then suddenly being down at ground level. Okay, so that's something to think of. Now, what do we see in the Bible where it talks about something being in the heavens and then suddenly being on earth? Satan. Yeah. So that, again, it triggered in my mind. I was like, hang on, what's this? What does this mean? So the beach ball's in the skies, in the heavens, and then suddenly being down at ground level makes me think of Revelation 12. Okay, so okay, I'm going to have to put that in Revelation 12 mentioned, because I'm going to find it. Bear with me. I've written down here, read out. So I'm going to read it. Revelation 12. Nearly there already. There we go. Revelation 13. Revelation 12. Okay. Revelation 12, 7 to 9. Yeah, so this is the woman and the dragon. Again, I mentioned this in previous streams before about that. I can't remember which streams it was though. It might be the future Exodus, possibly. I may have yeah, it may have been that one. Maybe that one. Sorry, you see, I just noticed you see it vibrating the table, because I'm just quickly writing that down. Right, so Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9 is what I've got listed here. So then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon being Satan. Okay, so Michael fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Yeah, that's where I leave that scripture. So that was 7 to 9. Yeah, okay. So that's that scripture. So that's basically talking about what I'm thinking that this is representing, actually. Because I've also got Saturn, haven't I, who I've associated with Satan anyway. So it could be that that's just there, and that in its isolation doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it had, in my initial read through, pointed me to Satan here when I'm trying to identify the beach ball. Okay, so could represent that. So again, I've used this Trump analogy and stuff. Maybe not. Maybe it means this. But it was interesting that kind of shoot down in that I see it in the sky. I see it in the sky. It goes behind the trees, and then it's down there, and it's down there now at ground level. And that suddenly came to me as I was reading all the writing this all down. So the backstory to Revelation 12, 7 to 9 actually is the people of Israel being preserved, a remnant in the wilderness. Okay, so that is the future. Yeah, future Exodus. I did go through there. That's a fascinating dream. Fascinating dream, that one. And it had the Holy Spirit say something at the end of the dream, which led me on this route. It was a crazy dream. Definitely worth you watching that. If you haven't watched it already, it's one of my earliest streams I filmed, because it was just one I had to get it out there immediately. I was so enthusiastic about this one. Okay. So where are we? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so that's the backstory to it. Yeah, the war breaking out in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, him not being strong enough, and then they lost their place in heaven, and then the great dragon is hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the world astray. So I pretty much wrote down some of the scripture, but I just wanted to get that word perfect as to what is actually written in the scriptures, rather than me just kind of throwing it together in that way. But Satan, who leads the whole world astray. As I said, I saw this beach ball speaking to kids. I mean, there may well have been adults in there with the kids, but I just remember seeing some children around this beach ball when I didn't actually see that much, to be honest. I mean, the patch of this playground I saw was quite small. Not because the beach ball was quite big. It was like a human. I didn't even mention that, did I? It was like a human-sized beach ball, or maybe even bigger than that, actually. It was probably a bit bigger than that. So pretty weird, pretty alarming. So he was held to the earth and his angels. Revelation 12 to 13. Oh, here we go, 12 to 13. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you. And he is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short. I think, when the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. That's Israel. Okay, the woman, going back to the future Exodus, that is massive in that dream. Okay, so that's what it's talking about. So it definitely links into that dream. You'll see now, I've had so many dreams that link into each other. And I'm wondering at some point, are they all going to coalesce into one massive dream, you know, that brings all this stuff together? I don't know. But that, again, so Revelation 12 to 13 as well. Okay. Because he knows his time is short. Yeah. With and he's filled with fury, and that was him speaking. I think him, or it could have been an angel, but because obviously the angels are thrown to earth as well. But I think it's to do with Satan. But pursued the woman, who's given birth to the male child being Jesus. The woman being Israel as a nation, you know, is given birth to Jesus. So could the beach ball here represent Satan and his angels thrown down to the earth, like I saw the beach ball in the heavens and the sky, and then suddenly thrown down into this playground area at the time, as it went out of view. The darkness is now closing in, because it's obviously dusk and darkness is coming. So again, I've mentioned that in the previous dream, which was the unrestrained series. I mentioned it in there because that goes through early day into dusk into nighttime. And what I wanted to get into in that dream, I wanted to also say that also somewhat represents the day, what we call, or the Bible calls, the day of the Lord, which is split into sections, which is the tribulation period, 7 years, where you have the morning star, and then we move into, you know, to denote the start of the day. The morning star is what you'll see just as the sun's about to come up, that kind of thing, you know. And then we go through the day, and then Jesus returns. Okay, so I felt like it was also representing that again with a lot of these dreams, there can be multiple levels to them, and there can be like an undercurrent of stuff that's covering it, and then you've got all the extra parts added on top. So could the beach ball represent Satan? In that I saw him suddenly falling to the ground, the darkness coming in, and the white horse bringing the false peace. The false peace is coming. This is what you're hearing a lot about right now, is world peace. That is in the scriptures, big time. And it's a false peace, or a peace that doesn't last. Very, very short. It says, you know, there'll be peace and security. I mean, literally those two, peace and security, you see that in documentation from all of these meetups. Peace and security, you hear it everywhere. And they're the specific words that are used. Peace and security are used all the time. So is it I'm trying to think which organizations do it. Is it the UN? I'm trying to think. I think it is. There's loads of stuff, and it's peace and security all the time. Okay, and it also talks about peace. There is no peace. You know, there's not going to be peace. There will be for a very, very short period of time, long enough that I think Israel is going to be led into a false sense of security, and then they're going to be attacked in a big way. And as I said, we've got a couple of wars that are coming, major wars. We don't know whether they're going to be before the tribulation starts, but they're certainly going to be seen as the warning of Jesus is going to return. Again, I heard that in some videos recently, where that's the sign that Gog and Magog, which is again across, as I mentioned, Ezekiel 38 and Psalm 83 are the two wars yet to come. I think Psalm 83 is more localized, and Ezekiel 38 is the bigger conflict, but they're yet to come, and they both involve Israel, and they both involve wanting utter destruction. You know, literally destroy Israel is what the motivation is of these nations that come against them. And then we get another one which is more to do with, it says seizing plunder and stuff like that, where their nations are coming in to take riches from Israel. And I've heard other people say, well, it's because of the first war that happens is lots and lots of riches are sort of seized by Israel, and maybe these other nations are coming in to take what they feel is theirs. Not sure. Again, I hear a lot of things from a lot of people. So where did we get to? There we go. So yeah, probably, yeah. So false peace. The false peace is coming. Again, I've had that in another dream, which is called the Gathering Storm, which talks about Ezekiel 38, and I think it's Ezekiel 38 specifically. I go into there, not Psalm 83. But I go into that's a really interesting one. That's quite a long video as well. There's a lot to cover off with that one. The first horseman, yeah. So first horseman is of course the white horse, being the first of the 7 seals on the scroll to be broken, listed in Revelation 6 verses 2. And then what else do we have? Oh, here we go. I've written it out. So I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow and was given a crown, and he rode as a conqueror bent on conquest. So holding a bow, which is a symbol of war, isn't it? And coming to conquest, but he's in white, which is seen to be that he's coming in a peace like motivation, but he's coming to conquer at the same time, which again, with a lot of this board of peace and stuff like that, there's a lot of, conflicts that are hotting up and stuff like that at the moment in an effort of bringing peace. So yeah, we'll see. We will see. With a crown, so basically, yeah. So he's not just he's a person with authority. Not necessarily a king, but means somebody who's in, well, like a president or somebody like that. Somebody who holds power, coming and rides in and is looking for conquest. Also makes me think of 1 Thessalonians 5 verses 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. And I put similar texts, which are Old Testament, are Jeremiah 6:14, and also Jeremiah 8 verses 11, which it talks about things like peace when there is no peace. Daniel 9:27, which talks of the Antichrist character forming a peace treaty and then breaks it. This picture actually weaves into many of my dreams that I've had, showing different aspects. The future Exodus, there we go. End Times series covers this all off. Call to Faith series covers this kind of stuff off. So I've got quite a few playlists which are around these kind of things. And I think that I have a feeling that we're going to get to a point of war exhaustion. I think there's going to be, because there's so many wars that are happening right now or about to happen, and there may be other ones that are going to happen as a result of others happening, that expand. Who knows? Are we going to have a World War III? Maybe, possibly, I don't know. But war is the second horseman, the red horse. Okay, so that will come after the peace horse, will be war. And it's going to be very, very bloody. Like I've mentioned before, it uses the words of butchering. So people are going to get butchered. This is not a clean conflict, let's say. I think butchering, when I think of butchering, I just think of somebody with a blade hacking, So I think it could get, well, it will get the worst stuff that has ever been on Earth, and there will never be any worse than this. I wonder whether there is going to be a war exhaustion, that happens from some of these other conflicts that are going on. Maybe Ezekiel 38, maybe Psalm 83, even like the current wars at the moment right now, which are like what's it called? Ukraine and Russia. We've also got the other wars that are just hotting up, between the US and Iran. may or may not happen. And then we've got obviously talk of China wanting to take on Taiwan. You've got all of these different things, loads and loads of different things that are going on at the moment. You've just had what's it called, the US attacking Venezuela to get all the drug cartels gone, all of that kind of stuff, all current events, loads going on. We're jumping from one conflict to another conflict onto another conflict. As I said, they were talking about like having NATO having a war with itself effectively, because of that's America and Europe over Denmark, who owns officially Greenland, and as I said, the US want Greenland for strategic reasons, so that they can actually protect Europe more effectively, really, because we're probably not doing a very good job of it. I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, I think it's all to do with that, to be honest. Dream 2, which was that very, very brief one, I'll just go very briefly into it, which was just to say that I'll just mention it quickly as a state that we're currently in. Really, it's not great, I suppose, as far as the state of the world, but it will get worse. The drunkenness and increasing violence of the days to come. Yes, I put more a lack of maybe a state of readiness for Jesus' return and snatching away of the church from the earth. Again, Thief in the Night, which is in the call. I mentioned obviously the Call to Faith series, which has the Thief in the Night. There's a couple there. Obviously, there's the one I mentioned early on, which was has the black horse in it, but it's in two different sections. One that's the season 2. Kind of reshooting the additional revelation, but also the original one, which has it more from a Thief in the Night kind of setup, which again went across that series. I've got other videos, one called Lawlessness, and then you've also got one called Science Fair, and also one called Leisure Center, which are all in season 1, which talk about the kind of environment. Well, the Science Fair one talks about the environment, really, of what lawlessness. It's the Roman Empire, basically, which is, again, from Daniel, the reformed Roman Empire, which is the feet of the statue of Daniel, which I've mentioned multiple times. And the Leisure Center one, is where we're all kind of locked up for our own safety, and because of something's happened. We're under house arrest in that, but we're in the Leisure Center in that one. And we all want it. A lot of people are kind of quite happy with it because they're safe technically, and they're provided for, stuff like that. I mean, again, the same as I ended the first video in this series, the stage is set. I think the stage is set, which was the end of that first dream, because of it showed it showed a stage, the curtains were drawn, but they're just about to be ready to be opened. That's what I think is going to happen. I think there's going to be something major. I don't think we're far off of something major happening. Again, whether it's a war escalation, where it's some sort of crazy level delusion, which could be things like UFO related alien disclosures and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's just delusions to such a high level because of the AI capacity we've got now, which is just increasing all the time. There's just so many things that could happen here, really, that I think the stage is set for something major to happen now. This is starting to be somewhat of a theme I'm seeing across this season, and obviously I've seen that in the first season as well. I'm seeing a lot of this kind of stuff. Okay, hopefully you found that interesting. It was a long dream. There's a lot to cover off. I was tying in obviously all the other bits and pieces, but clearly with this and the previous dream that was that beach ball one and land acquisition, let's say, there will be that with the Antichrist anyway, because he's gonna, I think he's gonna come in, and is it? Yeah, I won't. I'm not clear enough on the scripture to give you information on that. So just look up that kind of stuff. Obviously, whenever I talk about things, I can get my head in a bit of a muddle sometimes. So I apologize if I'm inaccurate with things I say. Believe me, it's never intentional, and I'm never hyping these dreams up. to get views or anything like that. It is what it is, and I just try and break it down as best I can, and use current events and use the Bible and tie it into the Bible as much as I can as to where these all are, and try and put it together as best as I possibly can. But I'm not perfect, so there are things where I'll slip up with stuff. And hopefully, as I said, you found this interesting. I wonder whether I'm ever going to get the red horse, or whether I'm ever going to get the pale horse, of Revelation. Not yet, but we'll see. We will see. Okay, thanks for your time. Long video. I appreciate your patience if you got all the way to the end. Keep your eyes peeled. There'll be more dreams coming through. They will be interesting. Of course they will be. But I've got no idea where I'm going to go from here. In all honesty, where I'm going to go from here. But we'll see. I did have a very, very interesting one about a volcano and the River Nile, which I've been putting off. Maybe calling that fire and water. I'm not sure. I may actually split it into 2 dreams because they're quite big. Really interesting. Again, it pulls into Revelation. Of course it does. So much of my dreams are Revelation related dreams. Huge proportion of them are. So that may be the one I do next, but again, we'll have to see. I'll flick through, see what grabs my attention. Okay, see you soon.